This is a special presentation of Money, Power, and Politics.
The VA says yes.
Right.
But the VA says no.
Right. They knew all the way back then, they just chose to ignore.
How could they if you yourself ignored it?
Well, that's where somebody should have done their homework.
Our government failed the men and women who fought for it. The President, Congress, and VA have ordered change, but a lot of veterans are still fighting and still suffering in our continuing investigation of forgotten heroes and the war at home.
We launched this series of programs 6 years ago. We had a source in the VA scheduling office named Nick McSwain.
They were basically directing us to pretty much go exactly opposite of what the regulations state.
He helped us uncover a national scandal of excessive delays for veterans' health care.
What they were doing, they would come, hey, why'd you put that as the desired date? Well, that's what the patient wanted, and that's how we were trained. Oh, well, no, don't do it like that.
And veterans' medical appointments hidden or lost.
Literally pushed in a drawer?
Yeah.
For the past 6 years, we've investigated waste and neglect. And veterans who died waiting for care and benefits they earned.
For them to come back here and be treated like that at really the only place that they have.
Well, the VA scandal of 2014 gave way to reforms through 2 administrations, but the problems are a long way from finished. While we're focused on the pandemic and the toll it's taking on public health, education, and the economy, we also continue to dig into the plight of ailing vets. Our investigations help some get the benefits they earned and expose lapses in the system for those who didn't. We'll start with a call to action for the politicians in Washington who may not even know what some of our veterans are up against.
Nothing depicts the way our government can fail veterans like the story of Keith Brown. He was a Vietnam combat vet from Winter Haven.
I'm disgusted that they're treating anybody like that, much less our veterans.
His first problem goes back to Vietnam. Keith loaded the Agent Orange herbicide onto the aircraft. The Army told him it was safe, and he was soaked in it for years.
We just, would play like we would be playing with water hoses,
Then, after he came home and celebrated his son's first Christmas, they told him that Agent Orange was toxic, known to cause heart problems, tissue damage, and cancer. The heart problems and tissue damage struck first, and after his knees, shoulder, and hip degenerated, the VA addressed the pain by making him run.
And they had him going up and down 5 flights of stairs.
They put him on stairs until he collapsed.
He was in a group of people that was half his age that were active duty. He just went down.
Then after his back failed, they botched the surgery by running his metal fluid container through an MRI machine.
Well, as soon as he cranked the thing up, pop! And blood comes all over me, all over my pants, all over everything, on me.
He spent that night in a pool of blood.
Next morning, my pastor come to visit me, and he said, oh my God, what in the hell happened here, What did you guys do?
Then came excessive drive times and wait times for follow-up appointments.
Maximum, how long has it taken to get an appointment?
2 years.
To try to fix that, Congress passed the Choice Act, which is supposed to allow veterans to seek timely care outside the VA if they live more than 40 miles from a VA center.
There's VA Choice, where our veterans no longer have to wait for endless hours, days, even months.
But like many veterans, Keith and his wife Cindy soon discovered the catch.
Lunacy, it's
lunacy.
Yeah.
Instead of his previous medical appointments that required him to drive from Winter Haven to Tampa, he had to check into the VA center within 40 miles of his home in Lakeland, which could not meet his needs and therefore referred him to Tampa. Meaning after the reforms, he had to wait longer and drive farther, from Winter Haven to Lakeland, then back home to Winter Haven, to wait for a referral to Tampa, then back home to Winter Haven just to see a doctor.
In all total, I think it was like 170 miles. Yeah.
And would you believe, after all that driving to appointments year after year, the vet who spent years soaked in chemicals linked to cancer could not get testing or screening for cancer?
They always are asking you about AIDS, and they'll screen for that. They know he's a cancer risk. He's not an AIDS risk.
What does that tell you?
It's screwed up.
But you remember all the bad stories that used to be about the VA. Now you don't see that.
Which brings us to the morning of Cindy's birthday in November of 2018, when Keith started coughing up blood. After those years of inhaling Agent Orange, the doctors told Keith he had lung cancer, and it was terminal.
And they end up being terminal by the time they see a doctor. That's not happening anymore.
It's like, let's wait until we are at stage 4 and you're terminal, then we'll treat you.
And would you believe, 1 month after his terminal cancer diagnosis, the VA sent him this form stating that compensation for aid and attendance or support for terminal cancer was denied.
He was upset to the max.
Then 3 months later in March, the VA denied his lung cancer was even connected to his service, denying his benefits for cancer as his final weeks on this earth ticked away.
There's got to be something better. Because if they wait long enough and that veteran dies, they are under no obligation to make a determination at all or to pay back pay. The families have been through enough. It's time to stop.
Well, the VA did send this form 3 months later.
In June of 2019, it admitted it had incorrectly denied service connection for Keith's cancer.
But then 6 days later, it terminated Keith's benefits because Keith Brown died in July.
I wasn't ready for him to go. I'm still not. And I thought, this is an ultimate slap in the face.
The VA does state cancer screening is a key preventive care measure. It just does not automatically provide it each year for vets exposed to Agent Orange.
If they did it to him, how many other people are they doing it to?
And that brings us to a call for action from a grieving widow in Florida to the politicians missing in action in Washington.
Screen those guys. Get it before it's, killing them.
Cindy Brown just wants Congress to ramp up cancer screening for veterans at risk for cancer. And she's looking for any member of Congress who may take up her proposal that she says could save lives in the memory of the man she loved.
If he were here today with you, and in spirit he is, what would he say to you?
Go get him.
Coming up, the story of this Pinellas County veteran reveals a crisis Congress cannot solve. It's freezing bank accounts, and it's holding up benefits for families already reeling in grief.
My neighbor gave me a hug. And I was told that they were sorry that my husband was passed, and it was an immediate passing.
We have a death mystery and a widow on the brink of financial ruin. And it all goes back to government failures you may not think are even possible in the United States of America.
We keep coming across errors upon errors upon errors.
This story of errors upon errors begins more than 70 years ago, when the United States started bombing itself.
Navy rocket ships literally saturated the beach.
Military ran war games in Vieques, Puerto Rico for decades, pounding it with bombs, flooding it with napalm, depleted uranium, Agent Orange, and other toxins.
That beach at Vieques was torn and flayed by steel.
Navy veteran Kaylin Hammond trained at Vieques years ago.
He was all about America, proud of being a veteran, proud of his country.
And after the bombing and training range closed, Kaylin left his home in Dunedin on a government contract to help dig out the mess.
He worked hard. They said he was one of the fastest diggers.
Is that a live bomb?
That's a live bomb.
Andrea Hammond said her husband complained of feeling lightheaded and tired after some of the digs.
But we can't say if that had anything to do with his death in June of 2019.
Because the government of Puerto Rico can't or won't say much of anything.
I'm not getting a response. The spouse isn't getting a response. The Red Cross isn't getting a response, and even our own congressman's not getting a response. And it calls for something to be done.
Andrea was already devastated by losing Kaylin when she discovered the problem with dying in Puerto Rico.
I'm in trouble.
First, she learned Puerto Rico has one centralized medical examiner for the entire island, on an island facing a dire shortage of pathologists that's run by a government reeling from poor planning that was backlogged long before Hurricane Maria.
And I go to sign in at 11:30, and I'm number 248 for the day.
Then she said they refused to let her identify her husband's body.
And I say, no, I need to see my husband, and they tell me no. They show me a picture which only shows me his face.
She identified him by the picture, and then after she left, she said they told her he was lost.
She calls me and tells me that my husband's body is lost, that I did not identify my husband's body. They're telling me I need to leave the island, that they will find my husband's body when the time is right.
They said when the time is right, they'll find it? That's what they said.
Yes.
Then days later, she said they told her they had found Kaylin at the crematory and would do the blood work and autopsy as required. Then when she picked up his ashes, they told her they never got around to that autopsy, leaving the blood sample to figure out how he died.
There is no indication of where my husband's blood work is.
So they've lost the blood work too?
Yes.
If there was even blood work?
Correct.
They may have just lost the blood?
Correct.
If blood was taken?
If blood was taken. No, no answers for anything.
What is going through your heart at this point?
My heart's broken worse than what it already was.
Then she received the death certificate riddled with mistakes.
I tell them that that's not the correct date of death. I've got a police report. I have an ambulance report that shows his date of death. They tell me there's nothing that can be done.
And it states there was an autopsy and the cause of death still pending.
I soon find out that nobody will take the death certificate.
Which is why she's now on the brink of financial ruin.
Can you gain access to his bank accounts?
No. He had 2 bank accounts that were in his name only.
She can't get the veteran benefits. 3 life insurance policies are locked up. She can't even cancel his health and dental insurance. She has to keep paying for that as she's going broke.
I can't get anything. All of them are telling me there's nothing that can be done.
And she's not alone. National news reports show other families are stuck in the same predicament because one forensic facility in Puerto Rico, which draws $2 million tax dollars a year, is failing grieving families across the nation.
And to be treated this way would devastate him, and to know that everything that we worked hard for can be lost because there's no accountability and they don't care would devastate him.
Coming up, see what it takes to get politicians to bend. We have a powerful lesson on how to change the law and deliver results. Men and women who served our country are suffering, and some are dying due to serious issues with military health care. And for years, they could not seek compensation or remedy from our government. What we're about to show you will make you angry on one hand, but proud and hopeful on the other. Because on one hand, it's the story of how our government has failed men and women who fought for it. But it's also the story of how one individual can change the system.
Richard Stayskool was gunned down in Iraq. Who knew it could get any worse after he recovered back home?
I was just really astonished. I mean, I was blown away that this is something that was real.
He was a Green Beret patrolling the streets of Ramadi when this bullet ripped through his back.
Ended up taking a sniper round through my left shoulder and came out my back next to my spine.
He received his Purple Heart, and years after he healed, he continued his training at Fort Bragg. But something wasn't right.
So eventually I just couldn't keep up with the runs, I couldn't do the training, and I ended up failing the course.
In January of 2017, he got a CT scan at the Army hospital, and he said they told him he was fine.
It was just this constant like, oh, you're too young, there's nothing wrong with you, you'll be fine.
But he continued to struggle and continued to ask the military doctors for help.
Eventually they just kind of said, well, maybe it might be walking pneumonia. They said, we have reviewed your scans.
6 months after his scan at the Army hospital, he tried a civilian doctor. And after the biopsy, he woke up to his wife in tears. Stayskool had cancer, and it had been spreading for months to the point of being terminal.
So originally in January, it was just on my lung, and then by the time I found out around July, it had moved over into my trachea and it had started touching other things.
Stejskal hired an attorney who brought on a board-certified radiologist who could not believe the Army doctors missed it based on their original scan.
I cannot fathom an experienced radiologist missing this case. If I were testifying in court, I would consider this a case of gross malpractice.
But he can't testify in court on this one. Stejskal discovered under U.S. law he has no right to take the doctors to court.
You could pursue remedies if you're a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
You could pursue remedy if you're a prisoner.
Yes.
But if you're active duty military, you have no remedy.
Mm-hmm. It sounds almost impossible that that's even the case.
So Richard took on two fights, one against cancer at Moffitt Cancer Center in Tampa, and the other fight against the system in Washington.
It's inexcusable.
As Richard shared his story with Congress, they heard of other cases like Lieutenant Rebecca Daniel, who bled to death during childbirth at a military hospital. Her family had no recourse. House lawmakers from both parties finally found something they agree on.
Well, there are a lot of issues that do transcend partisan politics, and supporting our troops is one of them.
With that, the House passed legislation in Stejskal's name to give active duty military the same rights to sue for malpractice as civilians and inmates. But as Richard and the other servicemen and women learned, it only takes one powerful senator to hold things up.
Oddly enough, it would seem to be easier to get to the president and the vice president than it was to Senator Graham.
For weeks, Senator Lindsey Graham, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee, would not even let it come up for a vote.
The deal is you sign up for the military, you get disability, you get benefits, your family gets well taken care of, and you're not able to sue.
Would you be willing to meet with Richard Stejskal?
Sure, I'd be glad to meet with him, but I'm not going to change my mind, yeah.
Funny how things change when a force like Richard Stejskal hits the fickle halls of power.
Everyone involved in this conference, including the Department of Defense, recognized the importance of fixing the medical malpractice issue.
With that, 86 senators, including Lindsey Graham, passed a bill giving active duty military a path to recovery. They still can't sue, but Congress directed the Pentagon to investigate and pay out medical malpractice claims up to $400 million this year.
It's now signed.
Richard Stejskal won the fight in Washington. Now, he's splitting his time between treatments in Tampa and family in North Carolina as he fights for his life.
They don't say a whole lot. We just hug each other. We tell each other we love each other, and just kind of, you know, they start, you know, they say bye, and I just say, I'll see you soon. You know, I don't like saying bye to them.
Coming up, our investigations deliver results from a staggering VA hospital bill to a widow on the brink of foreclosure.
And it's like a cruel joke, you know. You lose your husband, you lose your home.
As a widow of a service-connected disabled vet, Candy Weichert applied for compensation and then spent a year and a half waiting for a response on when or if she's approved.
Finally, you just sort of give up.
But thankfully she didn't. After we took up her case with the VA approved her monthly benefits and agreed to send her $30,000 in back pay for all the months missed. There was just one other big problem. The bank had already scheduled the foreclosure auction on her home. That's when we explained the whole situation to her lender, Freedom Mortgage. The spokeswoman thanked us for letting them know and said they want to help. 1 week later, she confirmed they filed a motion to cancel the auction. Then she sent this update confirming the judge entered the order to cancel the sale 6 days before the scheduled auction. Meanwhile, on the other side of Pinellas County, we received a distress call from Bob Steiner. He served in the National Guard. He knew he did not have full VA benefits. Unfortunately, the medics did not know that when they found him unresponsive on his couch. They just heard he was a veteran and drove him to the wrong hospital. To the Bill Young VA Medical Center, which does not take his private insurance. And when Robert came to, he got the bill for $14,000. That was his first predicament.
I could sell everything I owned and not be able to cover it.
Then, since he has no money to pay for it, the Treasury Department docked his Social Security check. That was his second predicament.
I went approximately 6 days, 1 month without food.
Then the bureaucrats said he'd have to take up any plea for help in writing. They sent him a bunch of forms loaded with fine print. Which brings us to his third predicament. Did we mention he's blind? And the home he can barely afford is up a flight of stairs. And the fine print he could not read just gave him the runaround. Steiner had been going back and forth with him for years. Then we explained his predicaments to Congressman Charlie Crist, Congressman Gus Bilirakis, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. The very next day, the VA asked if there was a particular time frame or deadline for our story. We said no because we wanted to give them reasonable time to look into it. One day later, Robert Steiner said the VA called and told him they fixed it.
Waiving the hospital bill. It was just like a weight had been lifted off of me.
And that brings us to others caught up in similar predicaments. If you or anyone you know is caught up in red tape or has a serious problem that merits investigation, please let us know about it. You can reach us through email, craig.patrick@foxtv.com, or you can connect through Twitter @Fox13Politics. You can also reach us through Facebook. We'll continue to investigate the cases of forgotten heroes, of veterans left behind, and anyone struggling due to barriers in government that should not exist. Thank you for watching.